On Tuesday afternoon, April 15th, 2008, a white and blue Alitalia jet touched down at Andrews Air Force Base outside Washington. Pope Benedict XVI had arrived for his first visit to the United States. President George W. Bush drove to the base to meet him on the tarmac, not the usual protocol for a foreign leader, who typically waits at the White House. That same afternoon, an ABC News consumer poll recorded confidence at a 14-year low. Retail gas had climbed to about $3.39 a gallon. Two-thirds of Americans told pollsters the price at the pump was causing financial hardship for their household. More than a third called it serious hardship. April was the kind of month where a papal motorcade and a quarterly loss could share the front page, and where most people were already talking about the economy the way you talk about weather, something bearing down on you every day. Hello, and welcome to Bitcoin Daily News. Today, we open the chapter on April 2008. We'll walk a month that mixed a papal tour, a Pennsylvania primary, rising gas and grocery bills, a record video game launch, a stack of bank write-downs, and a cryptography mailing list arguing about hidden gates inside computer chips, all 9 months before the Genesis block. The Pope's visit ran from April 15th to the 20th. There were masses, a United Nations address, and a birthday. Benedict turned 81 on April 16th, with thousands gathered on the south lawn of the White House while the motorcade rolled through Washington. On Thursday, April 17th, he celebrated Mass at Nationals Park. The ballpark had opened 2 weeks earlier, and the papal liturgy was its first non-baseball event. Politics did not pause for the visit. On Tuesday, April 22nd, Pennsylvania held its Democratic presidential primary. Hillary Clinton beat Barack Obama by roughly 10 points, enough to keep her campaign alive and keep the party's nomination fight going for another 6 weeks. Clinton's victory speech that night mentioned grocery bills and gas pumps, not just delegate math. The economic stress was not abstract. On Wednesday, April 23rd, NPR filed from Pennsylvania food banks reporting demand up sharply as food prices rose. Many families coming to pantries still had jobs. The problem was that wages had not kept up with the cost of feeding a household and driving to work. For most Americans who never set foot on a trading floor, April felt like a slow squeeze, not a single weekend panic. Early in the month, the University of Michigan's Consumer Survey recorded sentiment at its lowest level in a quarter century. Nearly half of households told interviewers their finances had worsened over the past year, the highest share since 1982. When asked why, the largest number mentioned fuel and food prices. Pollsters had already been hearing for months that the country was in a recession. In April, that was less a debate than a background assumption. 3 in 4 respondents expected bad times ahead for the economy as a whole, the gloomiest reading since 1980. 4 in 10 homeowners said their house had lost value in the past year. Gallup found 74% saying it was a bad time to spend money, worse than after 9/11 or during the early 1990s recession in the polls where that question had been asked. People were postponing cars, appliances, and big-ticket plans. Gasoline was the pocketbook villain pollsters heard about most often. By late April, 42% called it a crisis. Then came a different kind of headline. On Tuesday, April 29th, Rockstar released Grand Theft Auto 4 for consoles. Trade press reported roughly $310 million in sales on the first day alone, about $500 million in the first week. It was, at the time, the richest entertainment launch anyone had measured. Millions of people still found room in the budget for escapism. The same country was cutting back almost everywhere else. The banking story was real. But it was only one lane in a crowded month. Not a Sunday rescue like March, but a grind of quarterly filings. On Thursday, April 17th, Merrill Lynch reported a first quarter net loss of $1.96 billion. On Friday, April 18th, Citigroup reported a $5.1 billion loss and 9,000 more job cuts. Wachovia and Washington Mutual reported losses the following week. Wachovia cut its dividend by 41%. In London, the Bank of England opened a swap window on Monday, April 21st, and Royal Bank of Scotland asked shareholders for £12 billion that next day. On Tuesday, April 29th, the Case-Shiller Index recorded the steepest year-over-year home price drop it had yet printed. And on April 30th, the Federal Reserve cut its main policy rate a quarter point to 2%, with two dissenters who wanted to hold still. 3 weeks earlier, Bear Stearns had been sold on a Sunday night. But April did not repeat that speed. It repeated the accounting. What was happening in parallel on a small cryptography mailing list was a different conversation about trust. Still not about money, but about whether you could trust the machine in front of you. Perry Metzger moderated the list. The April archive shows 96 messages, RFID credit cards, two-factor authentication debates, parking meter fraud, cipher breaks. On Monday, April 21st, a contributor named Sandy Harris posted a back-of-the-envelope estimate in a thread called Cruising the Stacks. If brute force is the best attack, a 96-bit key buys you a century. A 128-bit key buys you geological time. Perry pushed back on sloppy math in the same thread. The argument was about AES and attackers, not about coins. On Thursday, April 24th, Stephen Bellovin, a Columbia University researcher who had helped design the early Internet's firewall architecture, posted a short link to newly declassified NSA publications, including the Cryptologic Spectrum series. Jerry Leichter replied the same day with pointers to related directories on the agency's public site. The list was reading intelligence history PDFs for fun. That evening, Perry posted again. A paper from the Uzenix Elite conference described malicious hardware. Add a tiny number of extra gates to a chip design, and an attacker with a secret could own the machine. Perry wrote that it was about the most frightening thing he had seen in years, and that he had no idea how one might defend against it. Jacob Applebaum, John Gilmore, and others piled into the thread through the weekend of April 26th. A second post from Perry noted that the counterfeit chip business was booming, which made hidden gate attacks feel less theoretical. On the night of Tuesday, April 29th, Bellovin posted a lighter note to the same list. A Hedgeland CD57 cipher machine for sale on eBay. After a week of arguing about whether silicon could be trusted, the thread ended the month with a collector's toy from the pre-computer age of secret writing. Looking back, April rhymes on two calendars that never met that month. On Wall Street and in London, trust was rebuilt the old way. Quarterly confessions, swap windows, rights issues, rate cuts after the numbers landed. In supermarket lines and at gas pumps, trust was eroding the ordinary way. Prices up, home values down, jobs feeling less secure. Poll after poll recording the worst spending mood in decades. On Metzger's list, trust was argued the engineer's way. How many bits brute force needs, whether a processor might lie, whether declassified PDFs from Fort Meade change what you think you know about codes. Neither conversation had assembled peer-to-peer cache yet. Both were asking what you can verify without taking someone's word for it. One with filings and backstops, and one with math and source code. The Bitcoin white paper that would wire those questions together wasn't here yet. Thanks so much for joining us today. Really appreciate you spending the time on this one. Take care, and we'll catch you in the next one.